Marine Le Pen, of course, reacted a little bit later. She had the opportunity to speak at the end of the show. She said that we shouldn't be naive and let the country and let our country that cannot defend itself. Mélenchon said, let's not panic, let's not interrupt our democratic process and give these violent people the last word.
That was a report last night kind of referring to the attack in Paris and the reaction from some of the presidential candidates over there to what's happened in Europe, really, and across the European Union because of their immigration policies and the like. Our guest right now is Katie Hopkins, kind enough to join us from London. She is a reporter and columnist for the Daily Mail. Katie, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm very well.
Thank you for giving us some time. You know, I remember when you had your own attack there in London recently, and you took a lot of heat for pointing out the fact that this is kind of our reality now because of how we've allowed immigration and immigrants and refugees to take over parts of Europe.
Absolutely. You know, there was this massive kind of push from the Liberals for this narrative that said, you know, we are not cowed, we are not afraid, we will carry on as normal, which of course is all very well if you're going to do something about the problem. But what happens here in Europe is we make these grand pronouncements about carrying on as normal. We light some candles, tea lights, we have a hashtag, we light up a building in the colours of the flag, but then we do nothing about it. And I simply made the point that if carrying on as normal is now brave, you know, we have people taking pictures of themselves walking down a pavement saying, I am not cowed, I am resilient, you know, and I was simply saying to this we have been reduced. We have now got to a point where in 21st century Europe, it's now brave to walk down a pavement. I took a lot of heat for that. My column that I wrote in dailymail.com was reported to the police as a hate crime purely because I was kind of honest about the fact that Europe is effectively being destroyed by the migrants that Merkel and others waved into Europe. And that migrant flood is still coming. We had 8,000 arrive in Italy last weekend alone, and we have had 33,000 so far this year across the Med.
And nothing has changed from the security point of view in terms of who they're accepting and what kind of screening process they go through?
No, absolutely nothing has changed. We do this really bizarre thing where we kind of group round each other and reassure ourselves that the good will win out. We had Macron today, as your listeners will realize, one of the candidates in the French election, saying, oh, you know, this is part of life now. Terrorism is part of French life. We have to accept this is a daily occurrence in France. That is not the sort of stuff people want to hear right now. They want to hear the stuff that Marine Le Pen is saying, which is let's get our borders fixed. Let's deport people on the terror watch list. I can tell you very honestly that people like me here in Europe have had enough of being told that the terrorists, once they've killed 2 policemen or 5, tourists on the bridge as they did here, slaughtering people under the wheels of a truck or a van. We've had enough of being told this suspect, this terrorist, was known to police. You know, we've got to a point where we're saying, so what? You know, you knew them. Okay, great. They still managed to get a truck and drive over 5 people. They still managed to get a knife or an axe and slaughter policemen, or, as per last night in the Champs-Élysées, a Kalashnikov and open fire at a busload of policemen. I mean, really, it is not enough to say we knew who they were. We need to take the next step and do something about it. And that can't be lighting up a chuffing tea light or a building or making heart-shaped gestures to the sky, which the Swedes are particularly fond of.
Right, that's true. You know, your paper's done some great reporting on what happened in Paris yesterday, and ask this question. The police clearly knew this individual who went on the terrorist spree yesterday, and the question was asked, how did they fail to stop him from trying to buy a weapon to kill police after they had him in jail recently for threats to the police. And yet he was still out on his own, and it apparently had been on a terror watch list at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he had a jail sentence of 20 years, so he was supposed to be in jail until 2020. He was released early, and despite being on a terror watch list, still managed to get hold of the weapon that he was then able to gun down the police, an attack that was very quickly claimed by ISIS. And I suppose as we leave these borders open, as Macron starts to say, we should accept this as part and parcel of living in Europe. We had our own mayor here in London after the Westminster terror attack. He said, terrorism is part and parcel of living in a big city. And I can tell you, that horrifies very many of us, the people that are silenced by those who would call you racist if you said the sort of stuff I say. And, the idea that our borders are still open and that 33,000 more migrants have already arrived in 2017 alone, we know that route from Africa up through the Med into Italy. We know that the Berlin truck attacker, you may recall the guy that took the truck and drove it into a Christmas market killing people, he came via Italy. So it's not just that we're not doing anything about the problem we already have. It's not just that we're not doing something about those we already know that are on the watch list. We are still waving people over the Med, and that's a madness that I cannot understand.
Katie Hopkins is our guest. She's a reporter for the Daily Mail in the United Kingdom. This issue, I mean, we've got PC police on this side of the pond, too, who try to shut down speech that they don't want to listen to. Maybe they're not quite as effective at it over here. But immigration reform is a big part of our recent elections here. People liked what Donald Trump was saying. Now you've got Brexit in your own country, and you've got people in France who've, at least there are some who are starting to realize with Marine Le Pen that there is a different way to handle this. If she gets elected in France, do you think we'll start to see a domino effect in other countries?
Yes, it's the dream that I have. I was a lifelong Trump supporter all throughout his campaign. I was the lonely voice here in the UK that was backing Trump all the way, even when our own parliament here discussed banning the gentleman, the 45th president of the United States, from our country, which was a horrendous day and one of which I'm deeply ashamed on behalf of all the British people. But I think that's exactly it. If Marine can get in now, I believe she may well do this because Macron, the person that she's directly up against, when we look at the figures, he is an investment banker. He's married to his own teacher, who is 23 years his senior. And because nobody wanted to join him because he has no people in his life, in actual fact, he had to start his own party. He's very much like Obama. He's very good with words, but we haven't seen him be able to do any action. Whereas I think with Marine, if she can get in, she will be the final straw that will break the camel's back. And I do believe the EU will collapse once Marine gets in. So my fingers are crossed that on Sunday she makes it through to the runoff and then she will win, and I believe she will.
Katie, one last question, and I saw you address this with Sean Hannity, I believe maybe last night. In every article we read over here about Marine Le Pen, she's described as the far-right candidate, like she's just some sort of a hardliner, almost Nazi type, and that's really not the reality.
No, not at all. That was with Tucker. You're right, Tucker Carlson last night on Fox News. Yeah, and that's exactly true here as well. Our state broadcaster, the BBC, described her as hard right, as far right, as fascist party, far right. And I am sick and tired of hearing the term far right. For me, it is not that she is far right at all. It is just that she is of the right and in the right, and she has the French people backing her. If you watch her audiences, it's a really emotional, patriotic feeling, exactly the feeling I got when I was in Cleveland watching Trump or at Trump's inauguration. It's a very emotional connection that they have with Marine. And what I've been asking people to do is when you hear a mainstream news channel or news channel talk about the far right, demand for them to explain to you who's the far left then, who's the hard left. Because it seems to me that just because they're sat, these liberals, way over on the left, of course everything seems far right, but actually if you're a normal person of sane thinking and clear thought, Marine sounds like a very sensible centrist candidate, especially to me.
Very good. Katie Hopkins with the Daily Mail. Keep up the great work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
All right, take
day.
care. Yes, you too. Could listen to her voice all afternoon, but we have to move on to a break here at some point. Then she makes just a great point, and she's living over there in this. She sees it, that there